Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic is the importance of movement, moving our bodies regardless of our age. And my guests are mobility pioneers Kelly and Juliet Starrett, authors of the book Built to Move, the 10 Essential Habits to Help You Move Freely and Live Fully. Kelly and Juliet, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here.
So you have decades of experience training and helping Olympic athletes, professional athletes, Navy SEALs, but this book is really sort of targeted towards regular folks, which is fantastic because you use all of that experience to help the masses. And really one of the biggest takeaways is that you often refer to movement as opposed to exercise. Can you talk about the difference between movement and exercise?
Yeah. First of all, you're absolutely right. What we've tried to do in this sort of crazy world of elite performance is say what's essential about creating a body that you can count on to do what you want, that's important for your family, that's important for your job, so that you can pick up your grandkids and go on vacation and not worry about your knees and back. And one of the problems with just talking about exercise all the time, I think, is that people get the message that probably exercise is very good for us. We should put on some muscle. We need to load our bones. But that doesn't really talk about maintaining the ranges and the capacities that we're all built with, that we're all born with. And when we start talking about movement, suddenly we can start to see that if I jump on a Peloton bike or, work in a little tiny range of motion, that really doesn't ask me to do all the things that my body is capable of. So where then are we going to put those things? Are we all going to go to 5 hours of yoga every day? Well, that doesn't really kind of work in busy working people's schedules. So how might we think differently about some of our small behaviors during the day so that we can keep an eye on our native ranges, which allows us to feel better in our bodies, but also maintain our movement choices, keep our balance, keep our range of motion, keep our strength, and do all of that with less pain.
And if I could also add, what we saw as we were writing this book is that we felt like people have gotten the message that they should exercise, and the amount of money that we're spending on gyms and fitness centers and similar things is bearing that out. We're spending a lot of money on exercise and fitness, and we of course are fans of exercise. But what we wanted to do in this book is remind everybody that usually your exercise happens in 1 hour, but there's still 23 other hours of your day where you still actually want to think about sort of making sure your body's in motion, at least for your waking hours, and what you can do to make sure that you can keep on moving during those other hours of the day.
And a variety of motion.
Right. And, you actually mentioned Peloton, and this book really spoke specifically to me, and I'm sure millions of other people, because I'm that perfect test case that you were talking about. I get up in the morning, I do my Peloton, free weights, and stretch.
Incredible.
And then the rest of the day, I spend it on my keister. I come to work and I sit down at my desk all day. I go home and sit down on the couch, I'm confessing. And so I'm like, oh, what's wrong with that? I felt like I was in good shape, but you're saying actually that kind of a lifestyle is problematic. Even though the exercise in the morning is good, the sedentariness is not so good. So then you talk about these sort of like micro movements, and it was really fascinating, all the different like little fidgets that you can do, just keeping little motions that you can do all throughout the day. Can you sort of elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. And I don't want to, ruin your day, but there is some research showing that if you exercise for an hour a day and then sit for the remaining waking hours of your day, in some ways you cancel out the benefits of that exercise. So I think that's just something for people to think about, that, we weren't designed to just move for an hour and then sit for the other 16
No, that would
hours
be like
of the day.
taking a vitamin and then only eating pizza.
Yeah. Right. I hear you.
But
unfortunately, I know it is bad news, but thank you. You need to tell the truth.
Yeah. And, if I told you that there was a single drug that could reduce your all-cause mortality by 50%, you probably would take that drug. And it turns out that drug is walking 8,000 steps a day. And, you know, one of the reasons we bring up walking at this point is that people have probably heard that walking is good for you. And everybody's probably heard 10,000 steps a day. It turns out that the number to get that great benefit from a health perspective is actually 8,000 steps a day. And that's why we put that number in our book, because we feel like that's ultimately much more achievable for most people. And that most people who have busy working lives, including someone like you who has, you know, a deep life and a big professional life, you actually can sneak in movement and walking throughout your day and reach that 8,000 step number without having to add a whole other hour of walking onto your day. We've really learned that that's possible. And what we want to let people know is all of this extra movement, it counts. I think we've sort of told people that unless you work out in an hour block a day, you sort of failed and you just should give up on movement. And what we want to say is, look, five minutes count, 10 minutes count. It really is your total movement in the aggregate that's so important. So even if it's just getting up from your desk to walk out to lunch to get, you know, a salad or whatever you're going to have for lunch, even just that movement, it counts towards your total movement every day.
And if I might add, there's a couple things that we should talk about there. One is we see that some of the big kind of boulders that people are contending with in their life end up being something like sleep. And one of the things we see is oftentimes people are not accumulating enough sort of non-exercise activity fatigue during the day. And when they start to walk more and move more, they actually create something called sleep pressure, which means you're more likely to fall asleep and stay asleep because you move more. The research is very clear that most people are only walking 2,000 to 3,000 steps a day, including your children. And one of the reasons walking is so important is that it's one of the ways that our body handles waste. And all of our sort of sewage systems are bootstrapped into our muscles. And when we walk, we actually have healthier tissue systems and we accumulate enough exercise activity to fall asleep, et cetera, et cetera. You probably also are going to go outside and get some sunlight on your body, which is really important. And you might even talk to your spouse or your neighbors. And so there's a whole lot of very complex, amazing phenomenon that are bootstrapped into this idea of saying, hey, exercise is great, but if you want to adapt to the exercise that you're doing more effectively, or on days where you can't exercise, let's go ahead and just keep that engine idling.
You know, you talk about sleep, and everybody knows you need to exercise to get a good night's sleep, but being sedentary most of the day doesn't really cut it. And so you talk about these micro movements and even called them fidgets, which I thought was really interesting. Fidgets, just moving back and forth, like if you're at a standing desk, you know, just shifting your weight, or if you're cooking in the kitchen, just shifting your weight, and just these little tiny steps really contributes to your overall movement. So can you just give a bunch of examples of how people can move throughout the day without exercising?
What you're hinting at is really that we have this extraordinary body that's really designed to do very capable things. Even if you don't identify as an athlete, if you don't identify as someone who likes to work out, what we realize is that we all have sort of aunties and grandmothers who never worked out a day in their lives, maybe even had a cigarette once in a while.
Not formally.
That's right, not formally. And, you know, are 95 years old living independently. So what we saw was, certainly we know that breathing hard and moving and lifting weights is great. But one of the things that we're trying to help people understand is it's not just raw movement. If we just put a treadmill underneath everyone, that would be we're moving in the right direction, certainly. But really is, how can we start to, you know, adopt shapes and positions? For example, when we go to the airport, one of the things we see is that people get in that airport scanner and they try to put their arms above their head. And it may be, it's for us as sort of trained movement professionals, it's very shocking to watch people try to put their arms over their head in the scanner. But what we see is that a lot of people have been asked to put their arms over their head for many, many days, maybe even months. And so when we can start to, you know, maybe walk through a doorway and put our arms up above our head, we're reminding our brains that this is a critical range of motion. Even just hanging on the edge of your sink and doing something that looks like a standing downward dog in yoga, but you're just doing it on your sink. These things remind your brain and your tissues that these are crucial aspects in range of motion so that you can have access to them later on. One of our favorite, and the first piece of homework I was assigned to everyone to understand what we're talking about, is see if you can collect tonight while you're at home 20 to 30 minutes of sitting on the ground in front of the television. We know you're watching TV. It's okay. But let's go ahead and see if we can move you off your couch or your favorite chair to the ground. And then every time you're uncomfortable, Change positions. Put your legs out in front of you. Kneel. Put your legs out to the side. Sit crisscross applesauce. And in the course of that 20 or 30 minutes, you're going to touch ranges of motion in your hips, in your back, in your knees, in your ankles that maybe haven't seen the light of day for weeks.
Wow, that is a great tip. All right, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with mobility pioneers Kelly and Julie Starrett. The book is called Built to Move. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're talking with mobility pioneers Kelly and Juliet Starrett. The book is called Built to Move. And I loved right before the break when you talked about little things that we can do during the day to increase our flexibility, our movement. And one of them is, instead of sitting on the couch and watching TV, sit on the floor. And it's weird that just sitting down on the floor is it sort of has benefits our movement, because our body is sort of moving in ways that we never realized before, right? What are some other things?
One of the main reasons that people end up in a nursing home is that they cannot get up and down off the ground. So to add what Kelly said about just the act of sitting on the ground being so good for your hip mobility and your low back, it also requires you to actually practice the motion of getting up and down off the ground, which may sound trivial to someone who's 35 years old. But as we start to age, it's a skill that we really need to maintain, and that we can maintain as long as we practice it. And so, it's one of the reasons why we opened our book with this test we call the sit and rise test, and why we're such fans of sitting on the ground for 20 or 30 minutes a day while you're watching TV or working on your laptop.
One thing that I noticed you also talked about in your book a lot are little tests that we can do to sort of see where we are, and to sort of gauge what our mobility and our balance is, which is another thing that you bring up is so important. And one of the things was standing from a seated position on the floor without using your hands. Can you talk about some of the other sort of like tests that people can do to sort of see where they are? And if you can't do it, we can improve.
Exactly. We really wanted to expand the idea of a vital sign. A vital sign is something everybody's familiar with, when you go and get your annual physical. And, what we realized in the pandemic is that people were very familiar with certain vital signs like blood pressure. We even saw people tracking things like SaO2 and other things during the pandemic. And we realized that we really wanted to expand the idea of vital signs to include some general health and movement vital signs as well, and things that both are fun that you can do with your family. You can get some really clear information about sort of where you are. And then every test we chose and every movement we chose are all things that include practices that allow you to improve. So we wanted to make sure that they were all actionable pieces of information. And our goal with this book is almost to think of it like an at-home physical. We call the thing we go to at our primary care physician a physical, but it doesn't really involve much that is physical anymore. It's usually, more medical than physical. And so we believe that people really, can use some basic information and go back a couple times a year and test and retest themselves and see how they're improving.
And one of the easiest tests that you can start to just toy with right away is standing on one leg. If we could just reduce fall risk in our whole populations, we would see admittance to the ER drop dramatically in any age. And one of the things that we see is that this balanced system is very much use it or lose it. And so you can start just by standing on one leg while you're doing the dishes, or while you're waiting in line,
or brushing your teeth.
The test that we have is actually called a SOLEC, standing one leg, eyes closed. And every human being at any age should be able to stand on a single leg with their eyes closed for 20 seconds. And the first time you try that, you're probably going to be shocked.
Yeah, it may sound simple, but you'd be surprised how difficult it is.
Standing on one leg with your eyes closed for 20 seconds. And if you can't do that, you can start to improve your balance by standing on one leg. I think I remember seeing in your book, you talked about trying to put on your shoes.
Oh.
Yes, while you're don't touch the wall, or don't hold on to a chair, but put on a shoe just standing on the one leg. That's challenging.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we think this balance piece is so great is there's so many small ways, like we were talking about earlier, that you can incorporate balance practice into your day. And one of them is by doing what we call the old man balance test, developed by our friend Chris Hinshaw. But it's simply what you said. You just leave your shoe and sock on the ground and stand on one leg and put your sock and shoe on, and then switch sides. I stand while I'm brushing my teeth for 2 minutes aside on one leg. We practice standing on one leg while we're doing the dishes. There's so many little small ways that you can add in this balance practice throughout your day that really will make a difference. And you can go ahead and retest yourself on the Solek test and see that it really does improve your ability to do this test.
And if I might say, we're not just playing defense here. We want people to actually feel better and to feel like they can trust their bodies. And when your balance system starts to get turned back up to 10, you're going to feel better walking on snow, walking on uneven surfaces. Your biking will get better. Your running will get better. We work on balance with every single one of our elite athletes. And so we just want everyone to understand, no one's going to go to a 1-hour balance class. Even our best athletes are going to work on their balance. So we try to turn it into play, and we try to bury it into our lives. It is one thing that will dramatically change how you feel.
So very important, having good balance, and so many easy ways to work on it. We're going to be brushing our teeth and doing the dishes anyway. This is great stuff, guys. So we're going to take another break and be right back with mobility pioneers Kelly and Juliet Starrett. The book is called Built to Move, the 10 Essential Habits to Help You Move Freely and Live Fully. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're talking with Kelly and Juliet Starrett. The book is called Built to Move. And, before the break, we could have talked for the whole half hour about the importance of balance. Balance helps to keep us from falling, and we know falls can be devastating. Really, sort of oftentimes begins a chain reaction that leads to, sadly, death for so many people. So having good balance is so important. And we talk about falls, and falls can be so devastating because of osteoporosis and brittle bones, which sort of moves into the importance of nutrition, especially to keep our bones strong in case we do fall. Can you talk about some of the highlights of having good nutrition for a long, healthy life?
Sure. I'll start by saying that Kelly and I consider ourselves to be survivors of the sort of last 30 years of diet culture.
Diet wars.
The diet wars. And we discovered a thing a few years ago created by a nutritionist named E.C. Sinkowski called the 800-gram challenge. And we started doing it in 2018 and have never stopped. And what it is making sure that you eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables each day. And the reason for that is there are so many important micronutrients and other, vitamins and minerals in these,
Fiber.
and fiber in these vegetables. And it turns out that, as Americans, we are not getting enough fiber in our diets, and we are not getting enough of these micronutrients, which have so many important impacts on our tissue health and our overall health. And now for people just hearing this, they may think, oh my God, 800 grams. There's no way I could eat that. But just to give a frame of reference, 800 grams of fruits and vegetables is eating 4 medium to large size apples in a day, which most people can easily do. But really the goal is to eat, whatever you enjoy. So if that's carrots or kale or rutabaga or blueberries, ideally you're getting a diverse amount of fruits and vegetables, but it really is, we've done things in this fitness space like demonizing bananas and other foods. And what we try to do here is say, hey, look, the sky's the limit. We just want you to get this number of fruits and vegetables. And that was actually based on a study that showed that all-cause mortality was reduced when people ate just about that number of fruits and vegetables each day. And it really, what we love about it is that unlike most diets, it is expansive. It allows you to eat what you enjoy, what fits in with your cultural
Potatoes are on there. Beans are on there.
Potatoes are included. Beans are on there. There's really nothing that's excluded other than perhaps a fried vegetable, but it is expansive. It allows you to eat with your kids and go out to dinner with your friends and be a normal person, but really just focus on your food quality and making sure you're getting these key micronutrients and fiber into your diet.
What about vitamins? Are there certain vitamins that we should all be taking?
Well, the way we kind of think about vitamins are, look, they're probably great health insurance. And certainly the way most of us are eating, or a lot of our friends and family are eating, we're not getting a lot of nutrient dense foods. They're just not full of sort of some of the essential vitamins and minerals that we should be uptaking. And so I would say that we should absolutely look at that as, hey, this is, especially if you have a teenager who likes to eat brown foods like we have one, we make sure she has a daily vitamin there just to cover the basis. But remember, what we're trying to do for people is say, hey, what is sustainable in the long haul? What respects your cultural values, your family values? How might you sort of have some calorie control built into a diet that is, and when I mean diet, I'm not trying to lose weight, diet as in eating and nutrition that again supports your tissues, supports your brain health, and supports your bone health. And it turns out getting enough protein plus just eating is all the fruits and vegetables that you can. It's shocking how transformative that is for people.
And our recommendation is always to lean into whole foods as a vitamin source first. But again, to the extent that people are focused more on eating ultra processed foods or just simply don't like a lot of different diverse fruits and vegetables, then there certainly is a place in there for a vitamin.
All right, good advice. All right, we're going to take one final break and be right back with Kelly and Juliet Starrett. The book is called Built to Move. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. We're talking with Kelly and Juliet Starrett. The book is called Built to Move. And guys, I'm sorry we're almost out of time, but I did want to touch on something that you really found important and that you really stressed is dealing with stress and breathing exercises. You talk about breathing exercises that can help reduce our stress. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that happens is that we see that we're all set up to just ventilate and breathe from our very first sort of breath in the world. What we don't realize always is that the breath is one of the easiest ways to control how our brain is feeling. And what we're realizing now, we're taking from our best traditions of yoga and martial arts, is that when we just have a little bit of formal training for people, we actually can make them change their state and feel better immediately. And one of the easiest things you can do, for example, is just shut your mouth and begin to breathe through your nose.
Yeah, just bring some intention to that.
And what that's going to do is that's going to just change and orient how effectively you can ventilate. You're going to be breathing through your diaphragm. And again, just that nose only breathing. We have a few tests in the book that can help you become a more effective breather, and how that will change your brain is in the book. But what we'd recommend first and foremost is any chance you get, let's go ahead and shut our mouth and see if we can breathe in and out through our nose whenever we can.
Sounds great. All right. Well, we're sadly out of time, but wanted to thank you so much, Kelly and Juliet Starrett. Built to Move, the 10 essential habits to help you move freely and live fully. Thanks so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for joining us for this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next week.